Because action is the only thing. Like, you can have all the intention in the world, but action, that one step forward, is always going to be obviously the thing that is going to push you in the direction of where you want to go.
So Alex, welcome back to the show. Before we get started, I generally think the phrase "the teacher becomes the master" is really fitting in our relationship over the last year. Because like when you started in the industry, I helped you, develop, get results, learn more, get you to the right place. But in the last year, you've helped me so much for some of the business stuff that I've lacked clarity on. You've basically become my unofficial mentor. So give us a little bit, before we go into talking about coaching, give us an idea for people who may have not seen the last episodes we did. Tell us about your coaching business, your journey as a coach, and sort of like, what's your goals with the business now?
Okay. All right. First of all, I very much appreciate that that introduction. I think what's the word for that? I'm not even sure. I still very much look up to you. Okay, so don't be putting me on a pedestal by any means. I think we utilize this relationship very evenly. So obviously, for the people that haven't known, obviously, or who I am or anything like that, then started out obviously as a personal trainer. I think it's a standard story, isn't it? Started out as obviously the personal trainer, moved online when COVID first hit. Good timing, right place, good timing, had good results. Built up that coaching business to do very well. We generally obviously work with guys, just getting them into great shape, basically. Okay, so obviously dropping the body fat, building muscle, improving their confidence, and educating them along the way is generally where we sit with that. I think generally, sometimes I do surprise myself. I don't know whether it's how I come across or what, but we've done all right from it. So it's been very, very good for me. Obviously, since then, we've managed to travel around a lot with that as well. Continuing obviously to get the guys in awesome shape. So yeah, it's been a journey for sure.
You say it's like the regular story of a personal trainer. You went and you did your gym floor stuff, and then you transitioned online. But I don't think it is anymore. I think there's a massive shift now. And do you think like the push to online coaching actually has improved or lowers the industry standard?
I think there has been a shift more recently, now that COVID is sort of like through the back door halfway, where coaches realized that actually it's not that easy online, and it is still like a very ordinary business that you do have to put the work into and the hours into and so on. And a lot of been going back to one-to-one. So I've definitely seen a shift there from the initial spike. And then sort of like there's the ones that are left, the ones that have generally really enjoyed it, have done well with it, have wanted to continue to push that. And then some have obviously continued with their passion in one-to-one. And that's absolutely fine. Again, like there's still huge value in one-to-one and online for both their own very separate reasons and personal preferences as well. So I definitely think there's been a shift there. With regards to, again, like obviously coaches enjoying it and so on, I think that's been the biggest discrepancy. And that's why they've gone back to say like the one-to-one, or some have separated off to stop one-to-one entirely and obviously move online.
I think it's a totally different skill set. And I think people don't appreciate this. And I didn't for such a long time until I started doing more of online coaching, where I used to think it was like, it's going to be easy to balance the two, because it's the same thing. It's just a different, leg of the same sort of brand and business, but it's a totally different job. And I think when you look at online coaching, you're looking at, it's a lifestyle program. You're looking at helping people's everything that's going to get them result. Whereas the one-to-one coaching is very much the micro. It's in the moment, in the session push. And it's something that's weird over the last few years, where I've seen it almost be demonized to be a one-to-one coach. Like it's seen of as lesser. Oh, we haven't gone online yet, or isn't that a horrible job being on the gym floor? Like, I know people that love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they get paid very well. And obviously they are limited. It's harder to scale, but they make good money working in a gym. We are very privileged as an industry, I think. But people don't see it.
As I think there's a big misconception with that for sure. With regards to it, it got very demonized for a while, but to be honest, I think that was just a marketing flex, and generally it is either like from the mentors, sometimes even from online coaches, to be like, obviously you don't need one-to-one. I'm very much in two camps with it, to be honest, because obviously I do actually really enjoy one-to-one coaching still. There's huge value in it, being obviously in person. Some people generally don't need it, and obviously that's when the marketing standpoint or the words of, oh, you don't need one-to-one, this is much better, we can have a much more bird's eye view of everything, we take over obviously everything else. At the same time, some people do, and not only that, some people just enjoy it more. Some people enjoy one-to-one more, some people enjoy the online more. So it's so much like, I always take what people say with a big pinch of salt. I always try and see both sides of the campaign. I try and analyze pretty much every situation in my life like that, to see both sides of the coin always. There's always going to be back and forths between, oh, this is better, that is better. I think from the coach's perspective, it's what do you enjoy? What are you better at? What can you push better? And so on. Obviously, the online coaches are like, oh, but one-to-one's not scalable. It's you're stuck on the gym floor, you're doing rubbish hours and so on. But then that same person will be sitting in their bedroom lonely, and they're like, I'm not sure whether I actually enjoy this or not, I might go back to one-to-one. And then the same side, obviously going over to the one-to-one guys, they might be like, I love this, I get to socialize, I get to see people, it's more than scalable enough for what I like and what I want to do. Plus there's obviously options in that. I think some people don't realize the different scalable models that there are within one-to-one, but then at the same time they might be looking at the online guys and being like, oh my gosh, look at the flexibility that they've got, look at obviously what they do, look at that life that they live when they're obviously looking through an Instagram reel, by the way. The 95% of that is literally sat behind a desk or in an office. Actually, if you're decent and you're working hard, then that's generally what 99% of it is looking at metrics on a computer, and so on. So yeah, I am on the fence with it. Obviously, with regards to your question, I'm definitely on the fence with. Obviously, I am in the online camp, sorry, because that is obviously where my passion lies, is where my business has done very well, and I do enjoy it. However, I'm in the mindset of it, I'm very even.
It's interesting you said Instagram reel, because you're seeing it from an Instagram reel, because the answer is always in the middle, and that someone's highlight reel on Instagram shows the best of everything, the best of someone's physique, the best of someone's client roster's results, the best of the working lifestyle. I remember for a while that all the business coaches were coming out with this, you can work from the beach and you get this flexibility. I have probably done that once, because I'd also ask, how many beaches have decent Wi-Fi connection?
Oh, horrendous. Yeah, you need to go to some premium clubs when you've got Wi-Fi on the sun lounger for sure.
The glare on the laptop, you can't even see
it doesn't
what
work.
you're doing.
I wouldn't dare get my laptop in the sun. Your laptop feels like it's going to blow up. So you'll see all the photos though when they're kicked back, and I hold my hands up. I've done it. Where you're kicked back, you're on the laptop, you're on the sun lounger, got a pina colada next to you, but by heck are you actually working there? The second that photo is taken, you're up, you're like, get me in that fucking shade now. My laptop's burning my legs and I can't see the screen.
Yeah, absolutely. But with the push to online, do you feel that people are missing a trick by not doing a stint at the gym floor? There's more coaching ever going, online is the first place to go. They don't actually do any time on the gym floor. And this is an age-old conversation, but do you generally feel that a coach can thrive online without doing one-to-one? Or do you feel that they don't learn the one-to-one interaction when the whole communication is behind a laptop? They don't know how hard to push. They don't know how to cue exercise. They don't really learn the skills of being a personal trainer before shifting it to a higher up scope.
Yeah. I do agree with that. I think I'm going to circle back around to this because I've seen instances where that's not been the case, but that's due to a different reason. So I do think people definitely need to pay their due diligence on their one-to-one coaching in person, for sure. As you say, you build relationships, you learn how to communicate with people, you build your confidence as a coach. When you first start being a coach, you're not confident at it at all. I remember what I was like when I first started, when I was about to have my first session, despite the fact doing the course and so on, I was terrified, and yet they were coming to me. So not only that, obviously you do learn who you want to work with, what you're good at as well. So generally, obviously coaches have got a better a better results track record of something that they're genuinely passionate about and what they're obviously good at. If they're working with obviously a whole scope of people when they first start out, they're going to get an understanding of what that is. Whereas if you obviously go online, you've got a huge pool of people of which you don't know what you want to work with. And not only that, obviously, when you're interacting with these people in person, you do hear a lot more frequently the struggles that they come up against, the lifestyle that they live, how to coach them, and certain aspects of that. So to be, obviously, generally speaking, to be a better online coach, I definitely do think you need to have your time in the game on one-to-one. You need to get obviously results like that, because then you understand what it takes to obviously achieve results. That being said, coming around obviously onto online, generally speaking, it does have, some do, some don't. This goes for the same as one-to-one coaches. Like a lot of online coaches bash one-to-one coaches, saying you only get your sessions, then you won't see them again. Well, actually, if they're a decent one-to-one coach, they're going to get the nutrition plans, they're going to get the lifestyle habits and so on. Okay. So again, having that perspective of both sides is really important. But with the online side of stuff, you do obviously generally have a bigger scope of things with regards to checking metrics over your clients, with regards to obviously dealing with their nutrition, dealing with their training, looking at their lifestyle, checking in with them more frequently and so on. So to attain results, that generally works better and really, really well as well. If you don't have the confidence as a coach, you're not going to have the confidence when you go to online. So if you're coming straight out of a qualification and you're wanting to go online, but you don't have the confidence as an authoritative coach first, you will struggle. With regards to coming back to your question of being a successful online coach, I don't think you need to be a successful online coach. So yeah, so I don't think you need to be one-to-one, essentially, depending on who you are, your look, how you come across online as well, because that otherwise influencers would not be incredibly popular online coaches, yet they are, because of how they come across, and it's very attractive. People like their stuff, they like their workouts, they like who they are, so they want to work with them. Whether they get a result, that's a different question. But from a business standpoint, if you're just trying to grow a bigger business, then obviously you could look at it in that light as well. Obviously, because we're not assholes, we obviously try to attain results as well as obviously grow a good sustainable business as well.
Yeah, I think there's so many things. You've given yourself a good debate on both sides of the coin there. But I agree with you in the sense of like spending your time, I hate the term in the trenches because it is not World War One, but spending your time like on the gym floor. The thing you mentioned about having a niche, that you have to have a niche when going online, right? You are competing against every other person that has a niche. One-to-one, your niche is the local area. So people are more likely to come to you or find you. And you can then start to work with people. I remember when we working in that basement in Shoreditch with you, I worked with the clients that people didn't think had any right to get results. I used to make the joke of, we have big Jack guys come in that, be there for this person, or this ridiculously hot woman would come in for this trainer. And I'd be like coming in, someone dragging their foot, diabetic needle in their arm, I heart veganism, and everyone know it'd be my client. But none of these things necessarily are things I work with now or things that have become my passion and my niche. But I found my niche to a degree working with all these people, finding out which people I resonated with, which people I could help more. And I worked around the clock to do about 5 years worth of experience within the first 2 years of the industry. So I saw these problems. And from a business perspective, not only do you start to learn, especially if you're freelance, where you don't have the constraints maybe of a company. If you're freelance doing this, like a Virgin Active or a David Lloyd, you have that ability to not only work with as many people as possible and learn your niche, but as you said, you're speaking to these people and learn their problems. You can fine-tune your marketing and fine-tune how you speak to people and helping people with their problems online before you ever need to make any money online. If you look at people like Phil Learney in the industry, he didn't charge a thing. He just wrote articles in his breaks when he was not taking clients at UP. And when he left, he had this massive audience because he built so much trust because he never asked for money. And I think that's something that's really important for the one-to-one world, not just from learning your craft, but how you actually can get trial runs before it's game time online. But I also agree with you in the online space of it. The way that one-to-one PT packages are sold, I think, do a detriment to the service of personal training because it's done by sessions. Even if you're buying a 12-week transformation, but when you split it down, it's £100 an hour. And because of that, when you're looking at the micro and the lifestyle, someone comes in and they're struggling with binge eating on the weekends or emotional connection to food, and you feel you have to rush talking about this thing that is the thing that's affecting the results. It's like, okay, let's talk about that for 5 minutes, but we need to do some split squats so you can get your hours worth of training.
Yeah.
And you leave so much little on the table. The focus is making sure that split squat's perfect, not actually helping them with the problem. And I find that when people have to be more autonomous with that part of their routine online, I can now help them with the thing that they need help with the most, not the thing that I'm just there to do at that moment.
100%. Yeah, 100%. I think when obviously you're looking at the two and you're making a comparison, I think the online is potentially, well, obviously missing the one-to-one aspect, obviously, which is obviously training intensity, potentially obviously technique. For coaches that are working one-to-one, you need to be checking over that stuff. If you want to do well, if you want your clients to be doing well and bringing out the training performance and attaining a good result, you need to be checking that stuff. Because obviously if there's lifting a dumbbell and there's lifting a dumbbell, like it's chalk and cheese. So online's obviously missing that aspect. At the same time, obviously on the other side of the coin again, one-to-one coaches, you need to be looking at some of the online guys and be like, right, what are these guys delivering that I'm not? If I'm only delivering these sessions, but actually you full well know that your client struggles with their lifestyle and their nutrition intake and so on, you need to create an element of your service that covers that, because then you will be the full package. And then obviously you'll be able to charge more. And then obviously not only that, you'll be able to attain better results, which is going to build your business long-term.
Build a business for referrals. You know, if you're doing that good a job with your clients, you might not need to worry about lead gen anywhere near as much, because your clients are going to bring other clients to you. And you talk about the exercise execution standpoint. I know there's going to be someone saying this. We can check for them because they can just send training videos, which I think is a valid point, but it's not as intuitive as you think. People often think like knowing someone's training hard is easy, but you know this from watching people train, you know, in person. There's a nuance. There is, to steal a phrase from Toy Story, there is falling with style, or there is control in a lift. You see it when someone initiates from the working muscle. You see rep speed change, and you see how close someone is to failure. People can grunt and they can scream and they can tell you it's hard all they like. But if that, you know when it's a lack of stability they've lost, or they're actually taking that muscle to failure. And that's something you only get by seeing it time and time and time and time again.
100%.
So when it comes to your journey, before we go into, because what we talked about before coming on air was, what are the top 5 things that make a good coach? And you've come up with, what are the top 5 things you shouldn't do to be a bad coach, or you'll put it way better than I just did. Right? Before we go into this though, what do you think first are the biggest turning points, or the best decisions you made in getting you to where you are right now?
There's a question. Taking uncomfortable action. I didn't want to go to one of the highest personal training facilities in London because I was absolutely terrified, but I done it. And that pushed me very, very far in my career. I didn't want to put out on socials. I didn't want to obviously get out as many videos that I do, photos that I do, be as consistent as I am. There's certain things that I just don't want to do, but you just need to do. So it's like what you would obviously say to a client, like sometimes you don't want to do it, but you just need to. We understand that term as coaches, and and we see the value in it. If your clients do that, they get a great result, but then they don't do that with themselves. And so on. So that would actually that's the first thing that came to mind off the back of that question, is actually just taking imperfect action and just going after it. Like in terms of what's got me to where I am now, just trying stuff. Don't be scared to try stuff and so on. Like we're going to circle obviously onto a few points of the topic of the podcast, but that being one of them, just like try new things. If like I say, try new things. Sorry, let me come back to that. Stick at something that you're good at and go at it wholeheartedly. Don't just keep don't get shiny object syndrome and try different things like just for the sake of it. But go, if you do choose something that you want to go after, whether it be obviously a new position in one-to-one, whether it be that you're going to do a launch of something, whether it be that you're going to go and post loads on social media because you obviously want to build up your following, or alternatively, obviously your online business, go at it aggressively. That I think I have done, and I've not really been afraid to do it.
What about the biggest mistakes you think you've made in your career so far?
On the contrary to that, although I do still go after stuff, I still massively hold myself back with things that I am not worried about, nervous. It's outside of my comfort zone, which is always everybody's problem. So I know, obviously, with what I've just said there's a lot of things that I've stepped forwards with and just gone for. At the same time, I know what I'm capable of, and I know generally things work out. Generally, for people, that's not just me. For people, if I ask every single person that's listening to this to think about things that they've gone after, how many times has it generally worked out? Generally, it's been every single time. So just go and do that thing. But the biggest mistakes I would say for myself is just purely holding myself back. And it's not doing that. It's not going after the bigger things. I might have taken a step forwards in a certain aspect, but there's other things that I'm like, oh my God, imagine if I was to do this. Imagine if I was to step on stage in front of thousands of people. Like, in my mind, I'm like, yes, that would be unreal. I would thrive off of that. But that is absolutely fucking terrifying before you actually start doing it. So it's like, do you know what I mean? It's knowing obviously what to do and then actually doing it. That I would say would be my limiting factor.
I think it's interesting when you talk about things working out, because I think it's human nature to feel that everything that you're feeling right now is forever. In the same way that clients feel that if they gain a bit of body fat after finishing a diet, that they're never going to be able to get it back. Like, you gain a bit of body fat to gain some muscle, but don't worry, you can always reverse that. Or if you're in a moment where you're feeling anxious or sad or depressed, that's it forever. But no, everything is cyclical. I had Pat Davidson on the show a while back, and he talks about it like the two sides of a mountain. When he was talking about his mental health, we went on to try and talk about training, and he just started talking about his own struggles. And there is going to be a shadowy side of the mountain. And when you're in that, you don't know if you're ever going to see daylight again. But then you come out the other side of the mountain, you realize there is light. And you can't get too comfortable there because there's going to be another shadow side. But the more times you do it, the more you realize it's okay to be in the shadow because things are going to come out the other way. So going back to your point of things always work out for the best, is that maybe if we looked at that one decision, how that took this direct path of your life, that maybe it doesn't work out. Maybe it didn't. But because life is cyclical and there are highs and lows all the time, it'll always work out in another way. So no matter which path you go, like a choose your own adventure storybook, you will always work out 4 or 5 years later. You can look back and go, that wasn't a bad decision, because something good is going to happen. Yeah. It's not like you made one bad decision and that is it. Bad luck until your 90s. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring up that analogy as well. It gives me a little bit of nightmares, to be honest, because I've just come off the back of doing with my team a 26-mile hike, which was horrific.
Where'd you go?
Up summits, 3 Peaks Challenge in Yorkshire. So,
oh wow,
we've done the Yorkshire 3 Peaks, not the national 3 Peaks, the Yorkshire 3 Peaks. Still very much underestimated how difficult it was going to be. So you just mentioned about going up a mountain there. I sort of had a little bit of an eye flicker, because it was like, oh, sort of subject there. But off the back of that, there was a really good podcast, and I, for the life of me, cannot remember whose it was now, but they were interviewing the founder of Netflix. And a really good thing that absolutely stuck in my mind was that he said that everybody thinks that it's always a one-way street and that you can't come back through doors. Like, they always think it's one-way doors. That's what he said, sorry, one-way doors. And that you go back and then you can't just go back again. It's like, okay, you try that. All right, come back in. If it didn't work, you come back through and then you go through the other one. But people don't think that way. They think, okay, once you've gone through that door, then that's it. That's that closed. And it's absolutely not the case.
Yeah. I think going into your hike, which I think is really cool. I love stuff like that. You know, life becomes so comfortable in general life that we all seek out. It's amazing now how many things we are popular that people want to go and do that are deliberately uncomfortable. It shows how comfortable our lives become. We seek out ice baths and acupuncture and all this stuff that's just not that pleasant. But
it's just ridiculous.
You wouldn't. I don't think you would have done it if you knew how hard it was. I think it's important that you underestimate.
No, I wouldn't have. I said to the guys, I said, if you told me that we were about to do a 14-hour hike, it took us 14 hours. If you had told me that I was about to take my team through a 14-hour hike, I would have told them I would have told them where to go. Like, although it's exciting, obviously it's good fun, if I'd known that, I would have been very hesitant. But we completed it. We done it, and it was great fun. It was very difficult, but it was great fun. There's a prime example of thinking in your mind that something it might be unachievable when actually it is. You just need to go and do it.
It's amazing what you do when you commit to something as well, right? Like I when I was in university, I was very, very, very many vodka sodas deep, like very many. And me and my mate had this idea at about 2:00 in the morning that we should walk the length of Wales. You know, we were at university at the time. It's about 182 miles, depending on which map. Anywhere between 177 and 182, depending on who you ask. I say 182 because that makes me feel a bit better. And so we decided to do it. And because we committed it to each other and we said it out loud to people, then we kind of had to do it. So I get to his house and I meet his mum for the first time, staying the night at his before we go away, and we go and get some supplies, like some camping food and pretty much horrible space food, but for camping. And I come out and I've been wearing the big camping, like hiking rucksack all day, so long that I've forgotten I had it on. So the day before I'm set to start my walk of 182 miles over 12 to 14 days, my mate's mum goes, "Could you take the shopping trolley back?" By the way, I have a fear of shopping trolleys ever since this moment. I completely forgot I had this bag on my back. So, of course, as like any stupid boy, try and ride the back of the shopping trolley. Always goes well until you realise you're counterweighted this way. And I go face plant, cut my knee open, destroy my trousers, completely bleeding. I'm like, now I've got to walk the first 4 days of this with a limp.
Yeah.
But I couldn't turn back now and say I was injured. Like that couldn't be done. And then I started it. I got halfway and my first mate bailed out on me. So I had to do 2 days on my own whilst I tried to, when I found phone signal, try and find another mate. I got chased by cows. I fell over stiles. I had to jump over multiple horses. But
yeah,
it's just like you. If I'd known how difficult that was going to be, not as a 19-year-old kid who decided this drunk, if I hadn't committed publicly to people, there was no way I would have done it. And I could have easily got home at the halfway point, but I'd said, and I collected money to say I was going to finish it. So I had to finish it.
That's good. I was this close from throwing in the towel. We'd summited the second peak and it was horrendous weather and I felt awful. I had multiple pulled muscles, strains. I felt sick. I was dizzy. It was just horrific. But yeah, there was just this like, I was group leader. I couldn't give up. How the hell could I be the one that was going to throw in the towel with the team there? So yeah, no, we muscled on. We got it done. We were in great spirits afterwards. It was the best cup of tea I've ever had in my entire life. After that, let me tell you that.
I agree with that. I remember my mate who'd done it before me when I did the walk. He was like, "You'll never appreciate pub food like this." And I'm like, "What do you mean? It's fine. I can't afford pub food because I said I did it. Generally, you think you're walking length of Wales, you're at a campsite, you got stove. You think it's going to be a relatively cheap holiday, right? No public transport, no travel, very cheap accommodation. It's not, because you think you can live off pot noodles and rubbish camping bacon for 2 weeks, but it's so draining, and you're so depleted that the thought of going and having fish chips and a beer, it becomes every other night. And it becomes surprisingly expensive. And I remember 3/4 of the way through, me and the second mate who joined me, we'd never struggled to have a conversation. We're back and forth the whole way through. We get lost on the way to Hay on Wye, and what was supposed to be an 8-hour walk turned into like about 16-hour walk. And we were so depleted, like we're just quiet for about 5 miles. We break a little Alpenbars, only food I had on me, like a ration in half, and we had half each. And I've never felt nutrients uptake into my system quicker than that. Like it just, you're so depleted that a tiny little bit of carbohydrates perk me up more than any carb up for a photo shoot has ever done.
Yeah. It's exactly what I done. When I got to the bottom of that second, I necked a full fat Coke, necked a Lucozade, had a large two coffees. And I was like, I need to, this is like, I was scraping the barrel at that. But
caffeine's your worst thing, man. Caffeine helps you struggles to buffer lactate. So you remember the initiations we used to do at UP, that little circuit?
Yes.
Remember the advice? Never take a pre-workout beforehand because you'll crash and burn.
Yes. Yeah.
But going back onto the topic anyway, and like I think I resonate with the biggest mistakes thing. I think one that I wrote down was I never asked for help enough. I was too proud and I always wanted to prove myself. I always wanted to show I could do it. So I never asked for help, and probably elongated my progression so much. I remember on day one when I went in, Luke McGurk was my mentor, and I remember I kept looking over at him just to see if I was doing things right, because I didn't want to ask for help. And he just took me aside after one session and went, "Simon, stop looking at me. You're doing it fine. Confidence."
Yeah.
Going into your thing, so I've got a list of 5 things that make you a good coach. You've got a list of 5 things that you shouldn't do. Should we take it in turns?
Right.
Do you want to start?
Yeah, so I wanted to preface that. So obviously the people listening, obviously I understand that the initial topic, obviously when you asked me, was like, right, okay, let's make a list of obviously 10 things that makes a great coach. And I was like, I'm going to do a spin on that. So I thought, and I'm going to put the credit obviously to where it was due. I recently saw a training from a guy called Alex Searle, absolutely blowing up at the moment. Incredible guy, teaches very, very well. But I watched a video on him, and it was basically exactly what you should do to be terrible at what the topic is. Okay, so to preface this, what I'm obviously going to come forward with for you, and I know you've only just found out about this, so newsflash, is exactly what to do to be a terrible coach. I want you to do all of these things to be absolutely horrendous. So
between
I don't know.
The two of us will have the best coach.
100%. All right. So, I mean, I'll kick it off then. So the first thing to do, if you want to just be a terrible coach, is to just be a complete hypocrite. So with regards to obviously coaches, they want obviously people to buy their service. They want people to get coaching, but then they've never ever had a coach themselves. They don't have a coach within their business. They don't have a coach within their physique. They're just being huge hypocrites to what actually they're portraying. Whereas obviously on the flip to that, if you don't do that, then you clearly see the value in coaching. Whereas if you are going to be a hypocrite, then do you see the value in coaching?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And I will second this in the fact that, you've known me for many, many, many years. You know that I ran education where we used to work. I have invested scary amounts of money in my education, both as a business, both in my own physique, and both in educational courses. All of those things have been valuable. But getting my own coach for my own physique, I have learned so much more than any course I've had times 10. And most personal trainers, if you go into, let's say, law, you learn from someone. You come in as a junior associate, you start to learn your way up the ranks. Personal trainers often, I remember when I first started Virgin Active, I'd never done a personal training session. So I had to sort of work out on the fly what it kind of looked like from watching other people. Never really had a proper training on this because the barrier to entry is so low. So I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't find out what coaching is like. Find out from multiple people. I've had multiple coaches. What works well? What do you like from that coach? What don't you like? What are you not going to take into it? Because customer service is one of the biggest things, particularly with online coaching. And often you don't know what good customer service is until you've experienced bad customer service. Because you know it annoys you. You don't know why. And you go, I'm going to make sure that gap is not in my business.
100%. 100%. Can agree more. I think coming on to point number two from myself, okay? Don't ever study, right? Not once. Just don't do it. Don't do that to yourself, okay? So if you want to be if you want to be an awful coach, do not study, all right? So I think coaches, obviously, they go through their training, they go through their qualification, they get their first job, and then that's as far as their studying goes. When obviously that is obviously not the case. You wouldn't expect that in any other field. That's like a professional sport athlete first having their first day at something and then thinking that that's enough. And obviously it's not the case. Like, you need to obviously learn your craft. One of the biggest things obviously that's pulled both of us forward, and I know that much, is the ability of consistent studying. Like, and that's when you find out obviously what you enjoy as well. Like, what do you want to study? That's where your passion is. People sometimes don't think of it that way. Like, what do you think about? What do you YouTube? What books do you read? That's where your passion actually is. So that's potentially the niche that you need to go into. But to round them up, because I think it's exactly as it says on the tin. If you want to be an awful coach, just don't study. Okay, don't read. Don't go to any courses. Continue doing that to be terrible.
You know, I agree with this one, right? I'm a huge nerd with these things, and I'll do two from mine. We'll go two, and then we'll both finish on one. And I'm going to do it in reverse order. I'm going to do a countdown, because I think my number 5 links with this massively. And my number 5 is having a drive to improve. If you, as literally as you said, if you don't have a drive to get better, for all the reasons you mentioned, you won't get a better coach. You won't get better client results. You won't improve. You also, and there's things that people don't realize, the power of studying and the power of feeling competent is huge. People
Massively.
drop out of hobbies. People drop out of interest because they don't feel they are competent. I know at hobbies, when I start, I build a bit of momentum, but I just get stuck and I don't feel competent. I'm more likely to give that hobby back or give it up. But if I feel competent in something, I build momentum and I start to enjoy it. So people that feel unfulfilled in their career is often because they don't do anything to help improve their level of competency.
Yeah.
From a business standpoint, something that people don't appreciate is how that actually helps you get retention and referrals by your drive to improve. Where we used to work, I had the number 1 retention in the entire company for multiple years running. And I used to listen to people present retention. Well, how was it you get good retention? And people talk about like knowing when packages are coming up so you can set goals and do all this sort of stuff, and being really on top of people always on WhatsApp. And I'm not saying that stuff is not important. It is very much important. But from a person with ADHD, shit at admin, I was like, I've got the best retention in the globe and I don't do that well at any of those things. So I wrapped my brain. I was like, what is it that allows me to get the retention that I do? One of those things will be my point number 4. But the other point of that was when I started surveying my clients. I was like, what? Like, you've been with me for a while. What is it that's made you stay? What is it that keeps you coming back for sessions? And an overwhelming majority of them says that I feel like I'm on a journey with you because you're always looking to be better. So I feel that if I stick with you, that's an investment because I'm going to get a bigger return on my investment with every single month that I'm working with you because you're just going to get better and better and better. So I'm here thinking that this stuff is just to help me give better results, but they're looking at that as something that keeps them engaged as well, hearing my story, hearing my drive, hearing my passion for it. Which brings me on to my number 4 is energy. Whether that's energy in terms of what how much you love your job and talking about what you're studying, what you're interested in, educating your clients, or whether that is pure energy on the gym floor. I have seen terrible rep counters on the gym floor that talk about, I'm not against talking about bad foods. Sometimes you got to show you're human to a client, but talking about like their relationship and their partner and the pizza whilst the client's just doing really rubbish stringy reps. Like Umar Malik also got great retention, a friend of ours. Why? Because his gym floor sessions were incredible. And because he had so much energy and so much passion for the gym floor, clients left without having to do all the admin a lot of other trainers do. They didn't want to ruin the diet. I came in and I always made sure that I left my clients in a better position than when they came in. I always would throw the story out when I was doing group training. And we had a 1 o'clock, you remember these, the 1 o'clock class and like the 1:30 class. And in that 5 minutes in the class, I had 20 missed calls from my dad or something like that. And my dad, like, we're close, we're very close, I'm an only child, but we're not 20 quiz calls close. So I found out in between those classes that my grandfather had died. And that was a very pivotal turning point in my career because I had this option to either, I could have got cover for that and gone home. I would all right to do it. But I went, no, these people are here. I don't want to inconvenience anybody. I'm going to come in and give the best class possible. No one knew. It was one of the best classes I ever did. And at that point, I was like, no matter what happens in my life, no matter if I'm having a bad day, work troubles, relationship troubles, family issues, when I go onto the gym floor, that is parked. And my job is to make sure that my clients get the service they do. And if you don't have that, if you're coming in with your head down and moaning about your problems, your clients will leave.
Yeah. Yeah, 100. That's massive. Obviously, I've seen that firsthand with yourself, like the relationships, obviously, that you build with your clients is absolutely fantastic from a professional standpoint. And obviously, just a coaching standpoint, like an educational standpoint, they absolutely love every session for years because they are continuing. And I think that obviously comes down to a confidence thing as well. Like, and you're going to gain confidence as you gain knowledge. Like, so the continuous quest for studying is going to come from that. If you don't feel confident as a coach, if you don't feel competent either as a coach, then expect to stagnate, expect to stay still, because you're not progressing yourself. So how can you progress? How can you expect your business to progress? How can you expect your clients' results to progress? You need to take yourself to a higher level to take your clients to a higher level, and your business, and so on. It's always going to go that way for sure.
So what's your number 3?
So, to be a terrible coach, don't ever practice what you preach. So you could obviously be, what I want you to do here is to tell obviously all of your clients exactly what to do. And I want you to do the polar opposite of that. Okay. I want you to be inconsistent with your training. I want you to eat like a child. I just want you to do absolutely everything that you tell, everything that you don't tell your clients to do. So what you tell your clients to do the total opposite to that. That's how you can obviously, again, be an awful coach. So obviously you're a walking billboard, right? Obviously, generally speaking as well, like you need to be practicing what you preach. I'll obviously always do the spin-off to these in case anybody gets confused. You need to be practicing what you preach. Yeah? You need to be leading from the front. It's very, very good from a client's perspective. If they see that you train hard, that's going to make them want to train hard. If they see that you are inconsistently training or not training at all, they will deem that as the set example. It's almost like when you get brought up as a kid, what you see your parents doing makes that the normality. Whereas if you're trying to obviously be a leader and you're trying to obviously build a business to heights of which you're potentially uncomfortable with, you need to step up and you need to become obviously that person. You need to be eating well. You need to be doing your steps. You need to be showing up, putting in the hours. If you're telling your clients to get their steps in, and even if it's like late in the evening, if you're not doing that yourself and you're kicking back on the sofa watching Netflix, while you're telling your clients at 10 o'clock to get their steps in so that they hit their targets, you're being a hypocrite. You're not leading from the front. Whereas obviously if you're putting on your stories, or if you're telling your clients, or if they see that in between your gaps in your sessions, or whether you're in person or online, that you're doing your cardio and that you are eating well and that you are making good choices and that you're in the shape that you're in, they will look up to that.
Yeah. I also think this is why it's a good thing for clients, to trainers, to do photo shoots, because every time I've done a photo shoot, I've got better results with my clients during that process, because I'm setting a better example. I do think there's a couple of caveats I will say to this. I do think it's important not to go so far down the route that you become alienating to clients. I remember I had a client of a girl who lost 40 kilos. You remember Rebecca Jays, right? You know, the big Kiwi deadlifter. And I remember that she said to me once, like, the moment when I really started believing that I could do this was the moment where you told me during your photo shoot prep that your coach, who was Adam at the time, allowed you to have a pizza. And she just had this image of personal trainers as being a bit different. Like, I can't wait for my next chicken and broccoli fix. And you know, so human. Yeah, like or every session's beast mode. If you have a bad session, then you're not doing it right. Where I'm very much way I look at practicing as I preach now is, have you ever heard of the 4 burners theory?
No.
So I always look at training cyclical. So the 4 burners theory is that if you've got 4 hobs on, you've only got a certain amount of gas, right? So you can't blast all 4 burners on at the same time. So let's say one is health and physique, one is business, one is family, one is, I don't know, hobby or friendships or social circles. You can't blast. You may be able to blast 2 of these at once and put maybe one other on a simmer. And I always look at where I practice what I preach is that I explain to my clients that things are cyclical, because it makes it, as we said earlier on, people often feel this moment is all there is, the mountain analogy. So they feel like, oh, well, I don't want to not drink when I go out for nights out. Yeah, but this is 2 months. I'm going out and having beers with my mates. But if you've seen me do a diet, and I'm all in to tick this box and get it done and allow me to have some flexibility in my life. Now, that doesn't mean I go mental and gain loads of weight and become, 300 pounds. But what it does mean is that, okay, I stick to the basics, but I'm also human. And I think that's different. So that's caveat number 1. I also think there's a problem the other way. When it comes to alienating, we spoke both about alienating, but I also think bodybuilders have a real problem with practicing what they preach too much. And they get, mother of 5, stressed to the max, the corporate CEO. And the first thing they do is give her white fish, broccoli and rice cakes. And she hates all of those foods. And there's 7 meals a day. And that, yeah, they practice what they preach, but they are so far removed from the person in front of them. They don't even know what it's like to be them.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, with that, obviously, you do need to have a coaching eye. What obviously I'm meaning by it is set the standard. Set the standard of obviously what you're trying to lead. And obviously you should have I say you should have a relatively similar tribe to you. Obviously that's not necessarily the case if your niche is not that. But just be there and showcase that you show up, showcase that you put the work in, that you work hard. I've seen it time and time again when people are, say, for example, like fat loss coaches or weight loss coaches and so on, they're not remotely in shape themselves. They don't turn up to their training consistently. They don't do what they tell their clients to do. They've never been in shape themselves before, because I'm a big one for that as well. Like you don't have to be in incredible shape, but I think it's huge value to be, or to have been in shape, to have put yourself through the process, because you understand what you're taking your clients through to a far, far deeper level, psychological level, of where you cannot grasp that in a textbook. You can't grasp that in a course. You can't even grasp that on a workshop where they're telling you how they would feel, because you haven't physically experienced that yourself. You haven't felt hungry. You haven't felt the tiredness when they don't want to go and do their training. Like, so when you have that deeper understanding, that will put you leaps ahead. As you say, like your client results improve when you're doing a photo shoot prep. I was exactly the same. When I done my photo shoot, that was one of the most highest learning experiences I've ever gone through. And I've gone through a lot of learning experiences. But it was that because I took myself through that process. I had a coach myself. I had accountability from, again, the coach. So I couldn't make up the excuses for myself because I had somebody to answer to. You then know how to communicate with your clients on that standpoint because you've been there and you've done it. Whereas when you haven't, you're potentially making it up as you go along, just guessing what you think is the right thing at that time.
Yes. And I also think psychological component is really huge as well, because you can have empathy. You know when people are pulling your leg and trying to be lazy, and you know when they're really struggling because you've been there and you've probably been there harder than they've ever been there. And I also think sometimes what you read in the textbook is, here's the things that help with hunger, like have a fiber supplement and all this kind of thing, and food volume and yada, 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 increased protein intake. All those things are very, very good. And they are first things I go to 90% of the time. But when you've been to a diet, you know the little things that helped you get by that don't make sense. I showed a client who's going through the final stage of his diet at the moment. He was struggling a little bit with hunger in the evenings. I went, I have these tiny little Dairy Lee blue cheese triangles that are like 15 calories a square. It's tiny. It goes against every bit of advice I would give from a textbook answer, but it just ties me over to my next meal. It's not meant to fill me up. It's just meant to be something that doesn't touch the size. If I go over by 15 calories, it doesn't matter, and it ties me over to my next meal. And I think those things that you learn. I also think we've seen an increase in this, and I'm a big biomechanics nerd. I love it. I teach it. I think if you understand your anatomy, if there's two things from an education standpoint that I feel coaches need to be good at, these aren't in my top 5, but I think there is understanding psychology, so you can communicate with your clients. If you can do that, any nutrition plan becomes easy because you can explain the benefits and work with the client to achieve it. And if you know your anatomy and mechanics, people don't think that's sometimes important, but I think it is, because then you can always work on the fly with training and you can make any training program work. Even if you don't understand the program modality, you can make it work because you understand the premise.
Definitely.
But with the rise of mechanics, the education, there's a rise of people that don't interpret it well. And we're now seeing a bunch of coaches that are, I'm not the biggest dude in the world, right? So I appreciate that I'm coming from a non-authoritative position to the same extent of like a Ben Bukowski or a hypertrophy coach. But I've got visible signs of muscle tissue on my frame. We have a lot of very, very tiny coaches preaching mechanics and reps in reserve. If you don't know what no reps in reserve is, you don't know what 3 is. If you don't know how to work really hard, you don't properly know the drop-off at a length and shorten range. Train hard first, learn this stuff. Good mechanics allows you to train harder, not easier. Slight tangent, but I see your point there about practice what you preach. I see it more now in small muscle building coaches than I do in fat loss coaches.
Yeah, 100%.
So what's your two?
So moving on from that, I think we went over number 2. So coming down from that is procrastinate. just procrastinate on things. Don't make sure that you don't ever take action on any of the ideas that you have, on any suggestions that you've been given. Just sit on it and think about it, because that will for sure get you far in your career. I say this wholeheartedly, right? Because this is something that I very openly hold my hands up and struggle with a lot. I think a lot of people do. I know certain people that don't, they're just implementers. They're just wired differently. It obviously comes down to how you are wired, but this is something that I've had to address significantly multiple times and still do. So if you've got an idea on something, if it's, this actually ties into another point that I've written down, is make sure that you're always talking and just not doing anything. So talk more and do less. Now, this obviously is not going to get you very far, because action is the only thing. Like, you can have all the intention in the world, but action, that one step forward, is always going to be obviously the thing that is going to push you in the direction of where you want to go. So if we're obviously keeping it within the coaching realm and obviously becoming a successful personal trainer and so on, if you are saying, right, I'm going to go out and speak to these people on the gym floor, right, I'm going to do a challenge, right, I'm going to bring in this whole new nutrition module into my program. If you've been talking about it for months, take this as a sign that you are a huge procrastinator and that you just need to do it. Be very, very active on that. I have to be so aware of the stuff that I say and have I actually actioned it. Like I mean, literally next to me now, I've just got a list of like Post-it notes that are great ideas, all of them, such good ideas. Have one of them been done yet? No, we're working through it. But again, this happens to everybody. But in terms of obviously progression, you need to be taking action on the things that you're talking about. So whether you're obviously an in-person trainer saying that you're going to go over and talk to people, there's one thing about saying that you're going to do it. It's another thing actually doing it. And by the time you've said, oh, I'm going to make sure that I'm going to go over and talk to people, you could have already gone over to the first person and said hello. Like, the same thing goes for obviously the online coaches that say, right, okay, I'm going to do a challenge, and they get all of their notepad out and they make it all look pretty with the ideas and everything like that, rather than actually putting on Instagram, I'm going to run a challenge on Friday. And then it never actually happens.
We see that a lot on online. How much time do people spend on Canva a week making something look perfect or coloring it? And this is what I've done. I'm wholeheartedly guilty of this. When I used to work off spreadsheets, how long did you work coloring all the squares to make it perfectly brand fitted and make sure the text was all formatted rightly? Like, can you track your weights? Yes. Then it doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah.
So much wasted time. So what you say, and I'm the same, what do you do to help yourself combat this?
Procrastination. And taking action. So first of all, obviously I get clear on what it is that I'm working towards. Then I will obviously write it down. I will make sure, because then obviously it stays. So the amount of ideas that I get, right, and shiny object syndrome and so on, like, kicks in. I get all the ideas in the world. I'm like, yes, this is a brilliant idea. I'm going to take over the world. I'll write it down first of all. Then I'll be like, right, okay, is this aligned to what it is? So those sort of ideas are slightly different. So I'll be like, right, okay, is this idea aligned obviously to what we're trying to build? Yes or no? Yes. Okay, good. Right. It stays in the pot. No, ignore it. It's a distraction. See it as a distraction. It's just shiny object syndrome. Outside of that, what I would do, because obviously how I have to structure my week is around energy management and productivity, because otherwise, naturally, how I'm wired, I'm naturally lazy. So I have to make sure that I've got things scheduled and that my diary is aligned to manage my energy. Otherwise, things don't get done. If it's, say, for an example, like a challenge, or it's something obviously with regards to marketing, or a new idea, a new training that I want to put in for the team, and so on, I will select a day of which I'm actually going to do that. I'll allocate a time to it. I'll block it out in my diary. I'll get clear on what it is that I'm doing. And then obviously I'll make sure that I do that. Sometimes it doesn't happen that smoothly and it does get pushed back, but then obviously I'll then do that exercise again and then get it done. But it starts with me saying, am I procrastinating on this or not? And not only that, what really fires me up, because I've got dreams bigger than God knows what, but like, I just ask, is this behavior aligned to what I'm trying to build? Is this procrastination aligned to the lifestyle that I want to live, the business that I want to have, the results that I want to achieve, the physique that I want to have, and so on? If it's not, I personally, that works very well. That question alone works very well for me, because it's like, we'll get the fuck up then. Let's go. do the work, do the tasks. And I think I go through phases of, if I am tired, if I'm not serving my energy, if I'm not managing my energy well, if I'm not eating well at the time, if I'm going to bed late, if I'm waking up late, and I'm just in, we go through peaks and troughs of being in that cycle. I feel like that could be normal. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But if I'm tired, then obviously procrastination is higher, but I'll be aware that I'm tired, and then I'll address that first. So I'll make sure that I'm training consistently. I'll make sure that my schedule and my routines are aligned to make sure, obviously, that I'm being productive. I'll go to sleep on time. I'll sort out my sleeping pattern. Generally, that then really, really works, because obviously from the Total Mental Performance leader, Kieran, he said something that really sticks, that's downtime is uptime as well. So if you're constantly trying to burn the candle and you're trying to obviously be productive and not procrastinate on things, but yet you're never ever having time off, then that also massively leads to procrastination and so on, because you're not going to have any energy. You're just going to feel zapped. So you feel like you're working 12, 16 hours in a day, but you've actually ended up doing fuck all. Whereas the work that you can do in 3 hours with a coffee, a good night of sleep, some good music and no distractions, you can rewrite a hell of a lot of things, or you can create a hell of a lot of trainings in that very short period of time. So I think from a procrastination standpoint and a taking action standpoint, one thing is going to be actually your energy management from that side of things. The other side of the coin to that is, with regards to taking action, it's exactly what it says on the tin. You just need to do it. Just stop thinking about it and just do it. And a good thing for that is putting it out socially. Put it on your stories, put it on your Instagram. Tell your clients that you're going to do something. Put it out on your stories. Say, I'm going to do a training on Friday. I'm going to go live on Friday. If these are the things that you're worried about doing, then that forces you to then do it, because you're like, shit, I've actually publicly announced this now.
Yeah. There's an old Chinese proverb I posted on my feed recently. It says, talk doesn't cook rice.
No.
And I love that. And there's another guy, the guy who wrote a book about the Align method. And he talks about, like, action leads to momentum. And that's more important than any motivation will ever be, right? So you just got to start. What is that smallest thing? And I resonate with a lot of the things you said there in terms of energy management. And I always say the answer lies somewhere in the middle. And we have this battle at the moment going on between the work hard hustle culture and the work smart. Both of these modalities are flawed. And it's about working hard in very defined blocks where you work incredibly hard, like quality of work over quantity. And that's going to be slightly different for everyone. Maybe that is, I work at, like, over the course of a year, I work a few heavy intensive blocks a day and I have more downtime each day. For other people, it's working around the clock for 3 months and taking a month off completely, working on a holiday and doing, like, the bare minimum.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think the thing for me is, like, in terms of my energy management, I'm very big of, like, little things will get in my head that allow me to not actually properly execute on the big things. So I become paralyzed by overwhelm. And it's not because I'm overwhelmed of how to do the big thing half the time. I used to think that was the case. Like, there's so many ways of doing this content strategy or this show or this thing like this that I don't do anything. But what I've started to come to realize is I've got emails unanswered, WhatsApps, I've had a bad night's sleep, I've got this person to talk to, I said I'd do this, I said I'd do this, I said I'd do that. And all these little things add up to the point where my head's so full that when one idea comes in, it's just one thing on top of the pile. When I have a really important piece of work, or really need to study, or really want to read this book, it doesn't happen because it's on top of that pile. And I don't think clearing the pile helps, because you will always fill that pile up with more stuff. It's being able to, one, learn how to say no to stuff that doesn't value you, so you can actually start to filter some of the things that's coming in. There's a doorman on the brain that stops things coming in. And also, just, I say, taking time out and prioritizing. So I know what are my non-negotiables for my business and for my life, right? They go in my diary first. I don't always stick to them. Sleep is a rubbish one. I always stay up way too late. But, like, generally that will go in. My client times will go in. My check-in times will go in. My content, my outreach. They are non-negotiables. I get them done. When I do that, I will then maybe put in focused theme days. I block where I allow myself more time than is necessary. I never used to book gaps in my diaries to block every little minute part of my day full. And that was overwhelming because I never even had a gap to eat or go to the toilet. So now I'm like, okay, if I think that job's going to take 1 hour, I will give it 3, and I can relax and be creative and take my time with it. And what I've started doing recently now is I've always said I wanted to meditate. I've always said I wanted to journal, and I've never done it because I've never been able to stick to a routine of getting up in the morning and doing it or going to bed before bed. What I'm doing now is any time where I'm starting a big focus block of work, I will start with 10 minutes of meditation on the Calm app. I will do my 5-minute journal. And I did that the other day when I just felt cluttered. I couldn't think straight with anything. I took myself away, middle of the day, hour away from the gym, sat on the harbour in Hong Kong, looked at the incredible views here, and I just sat and I meditated on the front. I did my journal. I just sat in silence for a little while. And while that made to some sound like procrastinating because I'm not doing anything, my problem is that I always feel I need to do something. So when I'm not doing anything, but I'm also thinking I should be doing something. Whereas this is absolutely what I am meant to be doing, nothing. And then I got my next hour was as productive as 3 hours that I would have done the day before.
Nice.
And I'm now just trying to build that into a routine. So it's not setting time aside to do stuff on top of an already cluttered diary. This is my entry to clear my head to do better work. And I think that's going to be the habit that I think will help me. So I prioritize. I know what are the 3 big things I need to do today. I put that in my 5-minute journal after meditation and I crack on. Whether it's at the start of the day or whether it's midway through the day when I'm about to embark on sitting down and doing it.
Yeah, I think two things on the back of that. So first point, obviously, what you mentioned there about the main 3 things and no more than that. That obviously, I got that from the one thing, the book. I got it already. You got me? We good?
Yeah, got you back briefly, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, obviously the one thing, the book, I definitely got that from, making obviously sure that you got your priorities. Now, previously, I didn't even have 3 things on the list. I couldn't even deal with that. I actually put 1 or 2 things on, like per day, because with that, like you've either got 5 or 10 jobs done throughout the week there. Like that is significant. Whereas obviously if you don't do that and you ask yourself to do 5 or 10 jobs in the week, you'd see that as like no chance. With obviously what you just said there with regards to obviously having all these things on your mind, what really helps me with that is actually just listing them, just get them out of your head and get them onto paper, because then it makes it very, very clear on what you've got to do. And then obviously you can sift through to be like, what's important, what's not. Another thing on the back of that, and final thing on there, is that I don't know whether I'm going to butcher this saying or not, probably, but structure equals freedom. Now, people obviously see that the other way, but I don't at all. Like if you've structured your week, every time that I have to revisit something, if you're in a bit of a funk, you obviously get into it. Okay. The first thing that I revisit is my schedule. How have I scheduled the week? Am I managing my energy? As I say, when am I doing my work? When am I training? When am I calls? When am I studying? And so on. Because then you'll find the gaps of where you need to be doing work, where you're working in the business, where you're working on the business. And then obviously when you're doing stuff for yourself as well, because you can see the freedom in that. So a few weeks back, I actually started doing spa night Wednesdays. So every Wednesday now, obviously, funnily enough, being today, is spa night. So I don't train. It falls on my training day. I go to the spa in the evening after work. Oh my God, what that does for my energy is absolutely unbelievable. So I'm not missing out on anything. First of all, I really look forward to it throughout the week. It's obviously only 2 days, Monday, Tuesday, and obviously by Wednesday evening, I'm going. And not only that, it just serves me better, obviously, for later in the week. So Thursday and Friday are then far better from a productivity standpoint, knowing that I'm very much aware of my push and pull times in my week. And for now, seems to be working really, really well. So definitely, obviously, one for that. I think me personally, I have to be very, very mindful of my energy management in terms of then I can have a high output.
You're not feeling guilty into the spa day because it's blocked out and you made sure the work's done. Whereas if you sort of like went to the spa and these things were still in your mind, you hadn't scheduled it, you'd feel like this was a time wasted. Which will then you will carry that into Thursday, and you'll feel that as a waste of money, a waste of time, and you'll just resent that thing. Same thing, totally mentality when you book things around it.
I think like you just never find the time for it. I would have never found the time for it unless I'd put it into the diary. You always have got the time for it. It's like you say this thing that you never have time for when actually you do. Because if a client books in for a call, you've just found the hour. So where have you found? So you say, obviously, I haven't had time to make a training, or I haven't had time to do this thing to improve the business and so on. But then somebody books in for 2 sales calls, or somebody books in for 2 coaching calls. All of a sudden you've now got 2 hours. Oh, that's odd that. So you have, so yeah, whenever obviously like, I schedule my week, I know when I'm doing my check-ins, I know when I'm doing my programming, I know when my sales calls are, I know when I'm doing the training for the team, I know when I'm doing my content, and then I know when I'm having my downtime, as I say. And I try and stay as close to that as possible. And I think that's what's helped me get obviously as far as we have.
Yeah. So going on to my number 3 and number 2 for the good coach thing, one thing I think is really important skill that coaches have is expectation management. I think 90% of client issues and complaints can be solved by setting good expectations. A lot of people they get overwhelmed because they don't set expectation of what is necessary for the client needs to do to get the result, or how long it's going to take. If someone's frustrated and not losing weight, but 90% of the time that they are losing at the weight they just have this crazy expectation they should lose 4 kilos a week and they should be at their end result in 10 days. When in reality, when you know from the start, okay, this is going to take 16 weeks, and we've agreed together that 1% of your body weight is what you're wanting to lose, that's going to be 0.7 per week, and this is what you need to do, X, Y, and Z. We need to make sure this is done daily, and then they know.
100%.
And if you can set those expectations from the start, you find way less headaches. When are the checker times? How important are they? How important is the communication? How do you set up that communication? When you go through communication, can you put the emphasis on working together with the client rather than like you're both detectives working together in the same game rather than a drill sergeant? If you can set those expectations from the start, the whole process becomes easier.
I think with obviously setting the expectation, as you rightly say, it avoids a lot of headache. I think it just avoids a lot of guesswork. When you've got the expectations set, you know if you're overachieving or you know if you're underachieving. And that can go from training your clients to serving yourself to multiple facets. You can set the expectations across the board there of what you want to be hitting, almost like your KPIs. And then making sure obviously that you're sticking to those. If you're over or if you're under. If you're under, let's go, pull it up. If you're over, happy days. Keep up the output, manage your energy.
A lot of coaches struggle having difficult conversations. But if you set the expectations right, they're not difficult conversations. If you don't say that you need to track your food and do this many steps, when someone's not doing it, they go, hey, why am I not progressing? And you go, hey, you're not doing the stuff. Whereas if you go, look, based off this, we haven't lost to the rate we set out at the start together. And going by the expectations, you are falling short on here. What can you do to get this up to the targets we agreed? This isn't telling someone off for not hitting anything. It's like, hey, look, we agreed on this. We're a little bit hard, a bit below it. What you're struggling with, how do we get you there? And it's that negative conversation is now a very positive and uplifting conversation. And all I did was set the groundwork early on. And I don't have to have those conversations anymore.
Yeah. Definitely.
That brings me on to my second number 2 point. Everyone talks about empathy, right? Everyone says that you have to have empathy as a coach. And I think it's one word off being correct. I think you have to have assertive empathy. Because yes. I find that I see more problems with coaches being overly empathetic than I see coaches being drill sergeants. We know some very drill sergeant coaches. I'll give a shout out to one, Dominic. Polish Dom, right? He is very to the point, no bullshit. Dominic gets crazy results. Shout out to Dom. I see, not everyone will agree with a drill sergeant. Eddie Bruter, drill sergeant. One of the best gym floor coaches in the world, right? These drill sergeant coaches can have an audience and can work because they set the expectations very, very clear. The overly empathetic coach, however, tends to let the clients get away with it all. It's okay. 100%. I know it's hard. So I think the middle ground of being assertive but empathetic, going back to what I was saying in the previous point, it's like, cool, I get that this is a tricky thing to do, but these are the non-negotiables that we need to hit. What can you do to bring this up? What system can we get in place? Or do we need to refine the goal? This is me being empathetic to where you are and understanding that if you need to refine the goal for a bit because life has just got ramped up chaotic, we can go slower. But it's not again, expectation management as well lies into this. It's not it's okay, don't worry. Because when the result doesn't happen, that client's going to be telling, hey, what's gone wrong with my coach? Why has my coach not done it? Whereas if 100%. You kind of go, right, we can refine the goal if you want me to be nice on you, but understand you won't get this. There's an assertion there that has to be done.
100%. I couldn't agree more with that. I do think I'm more of the the sergeant coach to the empathetic one. I do think I'm in the middle, but just generally, I think how I work is on
rookie mistake, man.
That's really weird. Sorry, mate.
No worries. No worries at all.
So I definitely think, again, that I am an assertive coach for sure. It's just my coaching style. It's how I work for sure. In terms of me personally being coached and how I've brought up being coached. Because how I see it is that people are obviously paying you for a level of accountability, a high level of accountability. But not only that, obviously they're paying for the guidance, they're paying for the support, the accountability, and so on. They're also paying you to pull you out of your own way. They're also paying you for you to pull them out of their own way, and to bring up their own personal standards. So then actually, when they're holding themselves to lower standards and they're holding themselves to the standards that they've struggled with for years, that's why they're in the position that they're in. As a coach, if you're not actively, and be very good at your communication with this, if you're not actively pulling them on that and making them very aware that this is the issue and this is why we're trying to step up to meet our targets. This is why we're trying to step up to meet these non-negotiables, because we are trying to break the bad habits. We're trying to break, obviously, what you've been holding yourself in previously that has not been serving you. Now, as I said, as a coach, you have to be assertive with that. You do need to be understanding and empathetic of certain things that goes on. Life throws curveballs. That's a tongue twister. Things come up. People have obviously got family life. People have got work issues that go on and so on, right? So you do need to be aware of that. At the same time, if it's on a weekly basis, or if it is just clients pulling excuses because you might have built a bit of a friendly relationship with them, so you have a little bit of a laugh, you talk about the weekend, oh, sorry, I went out and smashed it and hounded it over the weekend when I'm trying to obviously lose body fat and so on, that will happen more and more. You need to obviously be the coach first before obviously you are that person's friend. That's obviously one of the points that I actually noted there as well. And don't get me wrong, I build great relationships with my guys. Like, we do get on very, very well. I think obviously for the nature of the people that you work with, they will be quite similar to you. And obviously you might be actually not their aspiration, but like they might look up to you a little bit. That's obviously potentially why they want to work with you as well. But you have to have that barrier of coach first, so that you keep that assertiveness and keeping them to a high standard. Then obviously empathetic, friendship, and so on.
And this is where people struggle with going back to this difficult conversation thing. Sometimes people, and I struggle with this. I'm like, I also consider myself very much in the middle, but maybe teetering towards the empathetic side, as opposed to you on more of the drill sergeant side. And I struggle with this for a while. And I see a lot of coaches struggle with this, where they worry about having those tougher conversations or calling the clients out because they're worried that the client might not like them. And that you're going to get occasional arguments with your clients. You're pushing someone out of their comfort zone. Fight or flight's going to kick in, and sometimes a client will fight. And it's a bit, but it's not as often as you think. But the way I always think about this is nothing will make you're worried that the client will dislike you because you called them on not living up to the expectations that you set with them. I say nothing will make the client dislike you quicker than feeling you've wasted their time and money.
100%.
Especially if you're dealing with big business people who time and money is everything.
Yeah, they appreciate honesty. They appreciate honesty and like assertiveness, as we've spoken about. Obviously, not everybody works with high-end business people, but clients generally, and again, this is where it comes down to communication standpoint, because you can have a hard delivery, but then back it up with positivity and back it up with reinforcement for them and have belief in them, because obviously it just comes across that you care a lot. At the same time, you have called them out on their bullshit.
You can back it up with stats as well, right? If you're a good coach and you're getting various bits of data from your client, if I can show, hey, look, like last week you dropped 0.8%, your target's 0.6. And if we look this week, we've got down to 0.3. And when we go through this, it shows on paper that your nutrition looks good and your steps look good, but we've noticed you've now gone up to 12 meals out a week. This isn't a hard conversation anymore. This is, look, I'm not telling you off. Like, look, this is what happened. This is what's changed. This is the result. So do you want the smaller result and allowing this? Fine. Or do we need to bring this down? And if you want to kind of push for the target you'd set, what are we doing? Not what not do we do it? What's the plan of action? And you bring this to stats. It's not a you versus them. It's a look. This is clear as day, absolute matter of fact. And I think that becomes very easy a conversation to have. So what's your number one?
So I actually have two left.
Ooh,
I actually have two
okay.
left, right? Because I got a bit carried away, and
I'm all for that.
Going, this is what I do, but hopefully, obviously, it's good. So the final two more to be a terrible trainer. The first one is to consume. Just consume everything and never produce anything. Just consume things by loads of other trainers. Make sure, obviously, that you're absorbing all of this stuff and you're continuously watching things on Instagram, on YouTube, and so on. But make sure that you produce nothing for yourself. This is a very, very good way to build incredible comparison syndrome, and you'll hate your job.
It makes you generic as well. It makes you generic as well. If I was in, a business mentorship they're all in, right? And good mentorship. I'm not saying anything wrong about it at all. But you follow a lot of the community, right? And people learn from the same mentor. They all have very similar Instagram posts, they all have very similar messages. And all these messages are good, right? Nearly all of them are fantastic Instagram accounts. And it's probably fine for the clients they're trying to, because they're not trying to sell to you, they're trying to sell to their audience. But you see 30 online coaches all doing the same post, all doing the same blunt post, all doing the same messaging, all having the same offer. And then eventually, without even thinking about it, you take inspiration, you do a little bit of this, and without even realizing it, you become the same. And there's thousands of online coaches out there. People don't necessarily buy me because my offer's better. They might, and having a good offer is very important and something I've been working on a lot recently. We spoke about this off air. But the people that listen to this show, if someone listens to this show and says, I want to coach and I'm going to have one of these guys, so I really enjoy that episode, the person that signs up with either Alex or me is going to be based on the fact who he thinks is less of a prick, who he likes more. So people buy people. And if your personality cannot shine through because you become the generic online coach, because that's all you surround yourself with, you lose your marketing very quickly.
That's one angle of looking at it. Okay. The biggest issue that I actually see with this is not that angle. It's actually that it stops you from putting anything out at all. You do not, and you compare yourself. You consistently look at these people and you're absorbing everything. But all of these potential clients of yours, where are you? You're not on socials. Where are you? They're not seeing you because you're too busy consuming and just scrolling Instagram and so on. Like the confidence that you would have, right? The confidence that I think about this sometimes, right? The confidence that you would have as a coach if you were the only coach in the world would be phenomenal. If every single person just saw you as that professional and asking you questions, your assertiveness and your confidence in that position would be absolutely incredible. But unfortunately, that's not the case. Nowadays, there's a couple of coaches out there, which obviously other coaches follow other coaches. They'll look, oh, that person's absolutely smashing it. Oh, look how much Instagram content they're putting out. Look at their client results and so on. And then that brings them in. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm terrible. I'm the worst coach ever. I don't know how to do anything. I don't get any results. And I don't know what to post on social media because look how good theirs is. And it stops you. It stops you for going ahead with that stuff. And the second point of that sort of ties in, sort of doesn't, is make sure, finally, obviously just wrapping this up, if you want to be awful, right? Make sure that you fail and then give up after that first time. That is one certified way to just not obviously do well, right? Is fail once and then just give up. It didn't work. Absolutely backwards thinking. We grow up failing at things. We fall off of the bikes. We fall over when we walk. We do stupid shit and then we don't do it again because it really hurt. Or something like that, right? That's how but then when it comes from a business perspective or from a coaching perspective, okay, if you try one thing and it didn't work, you have given me a saying for this, which has stuck with me since day one that you said it, was that you wouldn't learn how to speak Spanish in a week, right? And you wouldn't expect to. It's ridiculous. You do it for one day and you think, oh, I'm not fluent yet, so I'm obviously not good at this, so I'm not going to do it. You would never even expect that in your thought process. So why is it that we do it for other things with regards to training, with regards to obviously doing things with clients, with regards to doing business prospect, like different things within the business and so on. Okay, you try one thing, it didn't go so well. Oh, right, that didn't work. I'm not going to do that again. Now all of a sudden I'm very unconfident because that one thing didn't go well. Like it's such a backwards way of thinking. Like you need to fail. You're going to fail. It's inevitable. And then you learn from it and you go again. You learn from it and you go again. You collect the data. Did you like it? Did you not like it? What did you do wrong? What could you improve on with that? Like, if other people are doing these things, they work. You just need to get better at them. So whether that be obviously from a coaching standpoint, whether that be your nutrition delivery. So obviously we'll keep this to coaches specifically. So a lot of coaches struggle with nutrition delivery and obviously what to prescribe for their clients. Okay. How I start the frameworks of what I started with when I started this online journey, right? And so on was shocking compared to what it is now, but I just done it. I put the reps in and it got better. Funnily enough, it got better after the amount of times that I'd done it. That goes for obviously from a coaching standpoint and then also from a business standpoint as well. Like try something. If it didn't work, why didn't it work? Did you not gear it up properly? Did you not put enough time into it? Could you take a different niche? Could you try it at a different time? So there's so many different factors that are going to play here, but doing it once and then it not going well is not, oh, that doesn't work.
I also think one of the biggest things in life, one of the most rewarding things in life is aha moments. You know, when you bang your head against the wall for ages and just things haven't worked, and then you get that aha moment, something that clicks, you go, oh, that worked. And you strike a bit of gold. It's happened to me today. We're talking about the podcast off air, right? A certain way of editing my reels that were different to how I did the prior most popular post I've ever had on Instagram, but maybe including my engagement post. So
lesson learned.
Yeah, so lesson learned. And then all of a sudden it's like, right, I've got a system. I'm going to go ham on this. And I've made about 30 of them today for the next few weeks. So those aha moments are incredible. I remember always fighting clients for having like red meat and nuts for breakfast because that was the way Charles Poliquin did it. And by the way, I still agree with this. In every client that did it, never regretted it. Never. They felt much better. And that's a different story from the podcast. But the battles I have with trying to get people to do it, I lost more than I won. I found other strategies. I found other ways. I found other approaches. I found problems that you wouldn't consider failures, but when clients are confused about stuff, I go, right, I'm going to go and sort that. And you develop. And I couldn't agree with that more. And I think my number one is, and we've already kind of discussed it, but it's sort of an overarching of everything, is having good communication skills. I have worked mentoring hundreds of trainers now in different countries. I have worked with them in groups. I've worked with them individually. I have seen so many coaches succeed and I've seen so many coaches fail. And you start to build trends of the certain things. Why is it that one person is a phenomenal coach and gets amazing results? And why is it that someone isn't? And in most industries, is the person who's better is the best, generally. The best lawyer, the best doctor, they are the best. Maybe not doctors. Doctors are probably quite similar to us, but the best welder is the best at the job. Whereas with us, I saw trainers that were subpar really get better results than everybody else. And yes. I wrapped my brain like, why is that the case? And this is why I also don't mind the imposter syndrome. I always think imposter syndrome is necessary. Everyone asks you how to get rid of imposter syndrome. I said, I wouldn't be where I am today without it. My imposter syndrome has allowed me to be just uncomfortable enough to keep pushing and learning more, as we spoke about earlier on. But I realized the people who communicate well get better results more than any training plan, nutrition plan, because they can encourage people to do it. There's a friend of mine here, I'll go up, plug out because he'll probably come on the show at some point, a guy called James Chester, right? And he is a good coach, but I've never seen somebody who has such a tangible ability to get people to buy into him. He says, I never have to chase up people. They just do stuff. He's almost annoyingly charismatic. It's like, oh, why do people just follow you? Like, oh. But he just has this intangible quality to the point where me and my mate on Monday, we caught up and we were talking about it. Can you put your finger on what he does? And neither of us could. And now that is something that is something that very few people have, that it is a quality that's very hard to learn. but it shows that's the thing that got them there. And if that's unattainable, there is a massive scope in between this where you can improve your communication skills. And I also think there's a massive benefit for coaches to learn outside of their comfort zone. Do public speaking, do improv, do podcasting, get out your comfort zone and communicate. Do dating courses. Some of the best lessons I've learned is like going on that wake up weekend with John, listening to dating coaches, even when I wasn't looking at dating. I remember a lesson that Johnny Cassell gave when I was researching dating coaches. He went, anytime a girl's across the bar and you're too intimidated to take action and speak to her because you're shitting yourself, just take away that thought that she's a 10 out of 10 and say that she can only be a 5 by looks alone. So that's the maximum looks. And then you will find out she makes the other 5. And because of that, it took the pressure away from me. I went to speak to more people because, I want to find out if she makes the other 5. I built up repetition, I built up competency, and I ended up getting better results. You know, in the same way, you like put yourself out there, whatever it takes to make it just not scary enough to go and speak to more people, you will learn so much. I think that will be better than any course. Like if I went back and started again, and you said, what's the first course you do? It's actually what I still need to do and I want to do. I would find a good NLP course. And the only reason why I haven't done one is because every man and their dog runs an NLP course. And it's like being here in Hong Kong and trying to find a good local Chinese restaurant. There's so many of them. You don't know which ones are shit until you wasted your money. Like if I get a recommendation on NLP, I will take it.
Yeah. So I think with that, I just counted to 3, took a shot and walked over. That's great. That was my methodology behind going up to people in a club. I think with that,
I've been on a night out with you. It's worked.
People, yeah, true. We won't go into that. Not publicly. Oh my gosh. People will know who I really am. No, I'm messing. So I think obviously with that, like the whole putting yourself out there, obviously the whole taking yourself out of your comfort zone, obviously this gets better through repetition. You will build your confidence through repetition. It's the only way. You will be unbelievable walking over to girls in a club. If you do it hundreds of times opposed to the first time, you will be very, very confident at doing a max PB squat if you've done it hundreds of times opposed to that being your first ever squat. Like it's the same references, but I think whenever you're going after something, whether it's obviously building, whether it's putting out on socials, whether it's doing a podcast, whether it's being assertive with your clients, and so on, the more public speaking, all sorts, the more repetition that you've got in it, the better you're going to be. And I think for me, that works well with how I think about things. So obviously that analogy that you use is great for you, but the guys obviously make that person a 5. Or another one that I know is like imagine everybody's just naked.
That's dangerous.
Just immediately changes the concept of it. But like for me, it's I'm one of like hold your breath and go. Like it's that jump off the cliff moment. It's just, okay, you've had this thought, it's a little bit nervy, you can feel the nerves kicking in, over you go, like now, leave it no more time than 3 seconds, just go. And then every single time, it's generally fine. But the more that you sit there, the more that you sweat on it about going over to the person in the club and chatting them up, whether you are doing a public talk, whether you are wanting to put yourself forwards for a podcast and so on. Like the more that you think about it, the bigger it becomes, the bigger that mountain then is. Whereas if you have not thought about it at all, and it just works really, really well when you're drunk, and that's why you just talk to anybody and everybody when you're pissed, because you just don't think about it. You just go cruising over and start talking rubbish. Great. It works. So like have that like momentary push to just, when you have the thought, get it done, put it out on socials, start the podcast, just do it. Because then you don't create this big task in your head.
Yeah, I agree. You know which your friend is doing the naked thing when 3 of you walk up to a girl and it's the one with the erection. You know that's
yeah.
You got to see one naked. I know what strategy he's using.
Yeah, I know this one. But while you're doing that one, nice man. I counted to 3 in my head, but that works as well.
the podcasting was interesting though, because I've learned so much from this in terms of communication skills. Because there's very few mediums. I'm not saying everyone should go start a podcast. You know, I do improv. That will give you a whole new set of skills. But you learn conversation things that you do that you didn't even realize were problems until you things back. I did my first podcast a few years before I actually launched the podcast, and I had this recording. It was never used when I initially started, and I was like, right, this is a good episode. I want to put it up, but it's hard for me to listen to because a podcast conversation is different to a one-to-one conversation, right? And you'll probably notice when we're off air, and like if I was sitting next to you in a bar, it's common courtesy, it's active listening for me to go, yeah, I agree, 100%, yeah. Did that first episode, my is really hard. And I still do it a little bit, but I go, or repetition of words I start to notice. And you also get a vibe for how different people communicate. There was so early episodes where I can tell I'm thinking of what's the next point I'm going to say. And I interrupt more accidentally. I go, oh yeah, you go. And it's human nature. We still will do it. But as you get more into this, and this is so important when you take it back to having calls with clients to make them feel heard and listened, sometimes getting the vibe of how somebody speaks, and I do this in my research now, I go and watch people. Like, I watched your reels before coming on. I know you well, but when I have a guest, I binge watch every podcast they're on to get a vibe of some people, they will stop. So again, I need to jump in quickly, otherwise it's going to have a massive pause in the show. But some people, they have that pause, and then they come back in. And you just start to learn, and taking this back to the gym floor personal trainer, sometimes knowing that your trainer is listening to you and not, or that for people who's listening to this, that's an arms crossed, or looking at the watch, or, looking around, or typing on their phone, or just interrupting them to tell them something that they feel they've heard or they need to do. Or, yeah, by the way, the origin of the teres major was this.
Yeah.
And you learn that so much because I have to watch these back. It's not a case. It's not like a sales call where you maybe should watch them back, but maybe recording them is a bit awkward for a client, so you can justify why you wouldn't. With a podcast, you want content, you got to watch back at least part of this, so you pick 100%. Up things very quickly.
Yeah, I think like that obviously we're going into a whole realm there. Firstly, I've got so many pet peeves whenever I walk onto a gym floor now. Oh, the stuff that I see, I just cannot switch it off. I've got such like coach's head. As soon as I step into the gym, I really try and just go headphones on. You're not there working. You're not teaching these coaches. You're not training clients. You're training yourself. Like, just ignore it. I physically can't. I see them. It's the crossed arms. It's the sitting down. It's the texting on the phone. It's just talking about the weekend constantly. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is shocking. Anyway, I digress. I've completely just thrown my train of thought now of what I was actually going to go into just then.
Improving communication skills.
That's what I was about to go into there, just gone completely.
But I think there we've had a really good list. I think between that, we've got the things that you shouldn't do and the things you should do. I think anyone that's watching this, if you're a coach at this point and you want to be better, if you do this stuff, between the two of these and work on these things and reach out for help if you struggle with any of these areas. Yeah, that's a big one. Farther than so much.
That's a big one. Coaches would look at like clients, and I was thinking about this actually before we jumped onto the podcast, is that coaches see people, public, right, struggling with their training, but they won't do their coaching but the coach knows from a good place that if they were to work with that coach, then they'd be able to see so much more progress. But obviously people just go at things alone. They just think, oh no, I can do it alone. I can do it alone. Coaches understand that when clients do it. However, they don't see themselves doing it when they're trying to obviously grow the business or when they're trying to grow their knowledge and so on. They won't ask the questions. They won't get a mentor. They won't go and study and so on. So it is a massive limiting factor. And we understand the concept when we see the regulars in the gym that turn up day in, day out throughout the years, and they always look the same, right? And we're like, if you actually got coached, like you'd look incredible. Exactly the same thing for them. Like, be open, be aware of that. And I just had a quick thought, and we won't digress into it because we love going down a rabbit hole. Absolutely love it. it's the understanding people. Going back obviously to your point there, that's just understanding people, understanding personalities. Like some personalities thrive off of conversation. Some people don't like conversation, especially obviously in their sessions and so on. They like way more direct stuff, then they prefer to just chill in silence or just have their marching orders, obviously, if you're working from an online perspective and so on. Some people love conversation. They love building a connection. They're very much people. So they love being coached that way. Like, become aware of that. And that will obviously come through repetition, but also you can study that as well. And it's understand obviously the different personalities that people can have, because then from a coaching standpoint, you know how to deliver to them.
Yeah, I think there's a big advantage we had as well. We were put into an environment very early on in our careers where we were assigned a mentor. So we had to get help. We had Education Weekly where you were questioned. So if you didn't ask for help, we asked you where you needed it. And I think that was something that obviously for you had your mentor and you had me doing the education directly. So I've seen your journey, but for me, it was the same thing. And I do, from a financial perspective, being self-motivated to learn will allow you to scale the business, probably allow you more career fulfillment and allow you less red tape. But on the flip side, I think we're very privileged to go to a big facility. So if you can go to, I don't know, an M10 or an Embody or somewhere like these kind of establishments that will teach you how to be a good personal trainer. They're popping up all over the place now.
Yeah.
Just for a year or two will do you so much good, because it will teach you where you think you need to know and where you actually need to know. That old phrase that the more you know, the more of an idiot and more of a beginner you feel. I think it's an important thing because it keeps you humble.
Definitely.
Some people hit I've got the most sessions in David Lloyd, so I'm the best here, and they never move on.
Definitely.
So on that note, I think that's a good place to end it there, because I know we could go Rogan style in 4 hours and you will never get any work done. You'll become procrastination, and we know how much you hate that. So for people who want to learn more about your content, because your content is excellent and you put lots of good stuff out there, and you said before we came on air that you've got a September intake coming up. So tell us about business, tell us what's going on, and tell us where people can find you.
So thank you very much for that. First of all, appreciate the content comment. It does take time. But obviously with regards to obviously find out where I am, Instagram, it's my most active place for sure. I'm going to look to push out on this, get onto YouTube, get more into Twitter and so on. But from a time perspective, a lot of my time is taken up by coaching and just putting out the Instagram stuff, of course. But that's just Alex Searle Fitness. Yeah, we've got a few things lined up, to be honest, within the business. Obviously, anybody that wants obviously to come on board with us, like we've got the September intake that we're going to be running, where we're having a big overhaul of taking on obviously the new guys, expanding our network, expanding our company. So I'm really excited to get that stuck in. We are just lining up the next client event. That's going to be in October. So that's going to be a workshop, primarily obviously this specific one. So generally how I like to run things is I do an upper body workshop and then a lower body workshop, and I'll bounce between the two. So we've got our next one coming up at the end of October. Very much look forward to that. And we've got a few socials being lined up and a few more challenges, because it's something that I want us to lean into from a community standpoint. We've got a great community of guys. So they're all hungry like me to do stupid stuff, like walk for 26 miles up and down some peaks. So we've got a few of them lining up towards the end of the year as well. But yeah, that's the main things that are coming up at the minute.
You said earlier on about how if you want to stop procrastination and take action stuff, you should just publicly say you're going to do something. I come back to the UK probably next June. I will join you for whatever challenge you feel is disgusting enough for me to jump on board.
Fantastic.
With. I will do it. I'm going to regret saying that so much, but let's do it, and we'll film it and we'll put it on we'll put it on our YouTube channels.
I'll publicly call you out if you don't do it.
if not, if I'm in Hong Kong, I'll do the same equivalent hike here. I stay here for an extra year, which would be much worse because it's hot and humid and horrendous, and I'll probably still be in a mask.
Perfect. Probably, yeah.
Right, man. Absolute pleasure as always. Thank you. I think that was a really, really good episode.
Thanks, man.
Hey guys, thank you very much for watching the podcast. If you're like me and like to binge watch podcast episodes, click here for our most recent episode. And if you enjoy the show and want to be updated when new videos come live, click here to subscribe to the channel.